in America today, and things are growing more unequal every time we measure this. Yeah. Oh, travel. Oh, come on. A friend of mine teaches in an elementary school down in South Bay. 95%, almost every single child on what's called subsidized lunch. And that's typically often taken as a measure of poverty. She takes her second graders on a field trip to visit La Jolla Aquarium near the Scripps down at the lower campus. Second graders. How many of those had ever been to the beach before? They're natives to San Diego. How many have ever been to the beach before? 2. In a class of 30. 30 kids in a second grade class? Is this a little bit of a problem itself? But only 2 of those kids had ever traveled to the beach. Let's talk about the kids' moms and dads. Well, one, because these kids are poor, most of them being raised by single moms. Yes, they are. Were there many moms going along on this trip, field trip? No, there weren't. How come? Because they were working. But one of the moms did join her daughter for lunch. Mom worked at a hotel at La Jolla Shores. She's a maid there. And on her lunch hour, she walked down to join her daughter for lunch. Let's think about that mom. Is she living in La Jolla? Unlikely. What is she doing? How is she getting there? Where does she probably live? Oh, is she Latina? Yes. Yes, she is. Is she very likely her mom, first generation? Maybe that mom is in the country what? Illegally. Is that little girl born in this country? Oh yeah, sure she is. Not mom. Now, this mother may not be literate in Spanish, let alone English. And she probably lives over in Barrio Logan, and she's trying to get to this job by bus. How long do you think it's taking her by bus to get there? No? That's part of your exercise, for the poverty exercise, which is why I assign it. I want you on that bus, and I want you to La Jolla by 8 a.m. And I want you talking to people on that bus, and you're going to find a very large number of female, who are largely Latina, going to La Jolla to do what? One of 2 things. What are they going to do? Clean or childcare. But get this, they're spending probably at least an hour and a half each way on a bus to get from Barrio Logan to La Jolla. They're spending a lot of time at night with their kids, helping them with homework. And what do we know? This is a very interesting book. Too many kids left behind. Just out. Too many kids left behind. Comparing the United States children in other countries. We're the worst at getting kids through school. We used to be in the 1950s, my generation, we used to be the best at educating children. We had the highest number of children completing high school as a percentage of our population in the 1950s. We had the highest number of people going to college as a percentage of our population in the 1950s. Now we are from first to worst. And the things that best predict how well a kid's going to do in school, what's happening at home. According to this research, and I recommend the book, too many kids left behind. 70% of all disadvantage is in place for children who will eventually have difficulties getting through school. 70% of that disadvantage is in place before they ever step inside of a kindergarten door. In other words, it's what's happening at home. It's that. Now, does this start pissing you off? If it does, then that's sounding a lot like Karl Marx, isn't it? That's subversive. Or if it's just making you unhappy and depressed. I sometimes get people telling me, gosh, this is really an interesting class, but it's really depressing. And if you find yourself going home after one of my lectures, looking for a rusty razor blade, I'm doing my job as a sociologist. Yes. I don't care what your elementary school teacher said. We are all equal in America. We all climb to the rungs of success based on our own willingness to grow up. Money talks, BS walks. It makes all the difference in the world. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. There are two kinds of things to be unequal with: wealth and income. Wealth and income. Income is simply money you get by way of work. Wealth is money you get by way of ownership. Income you work for, wealth you own. I know you can say that wealth is an accumulation of work, but not always. You can also inherit wealth, and that's an advantage of wealth over income, is that wealth can be inheritable. Income, for most people, the primary source of income is their job, their occupation. So, in the United States, the most important occupation, the most highly paid occupation, is physician. On the other hand, wealth. What's the most common source of wealth for most of average Americans? Anybody guess? Their home. But that's not the most important wealth overall in the country. It's ownership of companies. This is a capitalist economy. Under capitalism means the major economic institutions are privately owned. They're in private hands. And what you call ownership of a company, at least if they've gone public, you partially own a company. When a company sells parts of itself to the public, what's that called? Stock. That's all that stock is pieces of a company. That's a major source of wealth. What's a bond? In contrast to stock, what's a bond?
Like basically a loan.
Very nice. Yeah, absolute loan. It's a loan. Can businesses issue stock? Yes, they can. And what they're doing at that point is selling little pieces of themselves. If you were to buy up all of Apple Computer stock, what would you be? I'm very rich. I know. But you would be the owner of Apple Computer. Does that ever happen? Yeah, sometimes. Usually it's by investment firms. They'll buy up all the stock thinking that they can make things more efficient. They'll buy it up and then rearrange things and take it back public again, sell stock again, think they'll make a big profit on having agreed to one of these things. But a company can also issue bonds, and all the bond says is that you loan us money and we agree to repay you at interest. Which one of those is more reliable? Which one is a safer investment, stock or a bond?
Bond.
Bond is always, always safer. Which one usually pays a higher return? Stock. It is a reward for taking risk. What is, let's see if you know your investment. What is the safest bond you can own and why?
Mutual fund?
Nope. That's safer than a single stock, than a single company, it's true. But that's not a bond, that's stock. A mutual fund is usually stock. Well, I guess they could also own bonds as well. There are mutual funds. Yeah, very good, very good. But not just any government bond, because the state of California can issue bonds, so can the city of San Diego. What's the safest government investment and bond and why?
U.S. savings bond.
U.S. savings bond. Yeah, that's the federal government. Why is that safer? Does that sound? Oh, you hear that? What does that sound? It's printing money. Will the federal government always be able to repay its loans? Absolutely. Here, have $1,000. Now that money may not be worth anything because when the federal government prints a lot of money, what does it produce? Inflation. But it will always, always be able to repay its loans simply because it can print money. Bonds are much more safe. Okay. What do we know about the distribution? Which one is more unequal? Income or wealth? Oh, wealth overwhelmingly more unequal. They're both unequal. We often look at what are called quintiles. Quintile is a fifth. I'm not going to show them all. I know the top, fifth. If we're looking at income, in a state of pure equality, everybody would have 20% of all stock, blah, blah, blah. With income, the top 20% owns about 50% of all income. The bottom, about 0.5%. excuse me, no, not 0.2%, that's not 0.5%, that's wealth. It's about 2%. About 2%. With wealth, it's 80% and 0.5%. Let me give you more dramatic examples of this. Wealth. There is one family in this country, the Waltons, that own more wealth than the bottom 1/3 of the entire population. Let me repeat that. A family consisting of 5 people owns more wealth in the country than 1/3 of the entire country. The Walton family. What Walton family is that? What do they own? Walmart. Walmart. The top 1% of this country, top 1%, owns more wealth than the bottom 80% of the entire population. Top 1%. Yeah. We're talking very, very unequal. Why? There are a number of reasons for it. One is the change from a manufacturing economy to a service-based economy. In the 1950s, when we were one of the more equal countries in the industrialized world, where were most Americans working? Factories. And the largest American company in the 1950s was General Motors. It used to be said, what was good for GM is good for America. Today, where are most Americans working? Not in factories. They're working in services. Services. That's things like banking, healthcare, janitorial work, food production, selling stuff. What's the largest company of employing Americans today? Walmart. In the old days, working for GM as an automobile worker, could you afford to buy the cars you were making?
Yes.
Yes. Could you afford to buy a home on your own? Yes. Could you therefore lead the average American lifestyle? Yes, you could. The average worker at Walmart, can they afford to buy a car? No. Can they afford to buy a home on their average wages? No. As a matter of fact, nearly 1/3 of all Walmart workers will qualify for what? Food stamps, because their income is so low. We've just explained to a large degree why the country is growing more and more unequal. We've gone from General Motors to Walmart, from factories to service, and that explains a large part of it. Yes?
Have you seen that movie called Capitalism and Love Story about Michael Moore?
Oh, I've seen that one. Even more interesting. Actually, if you want, you want a little extra credit? This is a little more academically acceptable. It's called Inequality for All, professor at UC Berkeley, Robert Reich. You can get it on Netflix. You can get it even in Redbox, I think. It's actually, I think someone told me you can get it on YouTube along with my lectures, evidently. You watch that, write a 1-page response. I'll give you 5 little extra credit points. 5 little extra credit points. It's about growing economic inequality in America. Oh my God, I gotta stop. Oh jeez, I forgot all about this. I get into this stuff again. You got a quiz coming up. Oh, rats. I don't have time. I can't, that's not fair to you. Okay, I'm going to delay it. I'll delay the quiz until a week from today. Yes.
Could you just post on Blackboard today the?
No, it's just I need the